Hello and welcome back to my channel where I just talk about whatever is on my mind and basically say whatever the heck I want. My name is Adrielle, and today I decided to go for a nice long drive because that was soothing, especially just belting out all the songs, singing along. There's just something so healing about that. But part of the reason that I did that is because this last week has been a bit of chaos for me, internally especially, but also very stressful at work. But what I'm kind of realizing is that, the chaos in my life, which I have been focused on, is pretty much shared by a whole lot of people. There's a lot happening in the world, and it just seems like there is more and more of this chaos, but in the chaos, it's like people are there's just a lot of pressure to be or not be certain way, to show up a certain way or not show up a certain way. And, that can all be really confusing. And it just seems like the more rules that get piled on to how we conduct ourselves is literal bullshit. Because when you think about that, like any sort of religion that piles on rules on rules on rules, like what is the product of that? Ultimately, the product is people hide stuff and they act out more, and they hide it, and so I feel the same way with how the world is sort of functioning or trying to function right now, in that we think that if we put more rules out there that will fix things, and it won't, unfortunately, or fortunately. So again, it always has to come back to this sense of knowing yourself and this sense of sort of understanding what your beliefs are, and also like understanding that those things are going to change. They're going to evolve. We as humans are constantly evolving. And whether we like it or not, that's not going to include some of the beliefs that you had 5 years ago, that I had 5 years ago, 10 years ago, 20 years ago, some people, it seems like they might have more of that consistent sort of baseline, but you have to basically listen to yourself, and you have to listen to that voice inside of you that is sort of helping you and guiding you to find your own way. Because if you try to go the same way as everybody else, you're not going to be very happy. I tried that for a long time, and I ultimately was just not very happy. I put on a good face and I showed up how the best that I knew how at the time, and it has all served me in the end. But it was kind of miserable, when you are hiding pieces of yourself because you don't think it makes you good enough, or because you think that it's somehow shameful when it's a natural part of your being. All of these things are not only confusing, but it makes you show up in ways that are not authentic to who you are. So who are you? You need to find out. You need to dig in a little bit and be willing to do life messy. And for me, that was probably one of the more pivotal things in my life, is just learning that everything will be okay, even if, and maybe even especially when I do it messy. So for me, that might mean that I show up one day and I make a whole freaking mess out of things, and like my over analytical brain will run that shit around in my head for an entire week. And it has, as I try to figure out what it all means, and like how I want to show up going forward, and just kind of like looking at every little angle, because that's just how my brain works. And I have to be okay with that. even though like I hate it in the moment, you know, like I do not enjoy all the anxious feelings that come up when I think about how I screwed things up, or how I, could do better, or, all of these things that I kind of like try and put these rules around how I should perform or how I should act in the future. But ultimately, what it comes back to for me is that is all kind of bullshit too. The truth of the matter is I am human, and I'm going to make mistakes, and I need to be okay with that. And I even need to be okay with my process, because I have one. Even if I don't love it, I can always try to improve it, of course, but I have my own process of how I go through things, especially when, the conflict is not easily settled on the other end, right? So like I have to take responsibility for myself. I have to take responsibility for how I react, but then I also just need to give myself grace. So much grace. Like it feels like a ridiculous amount of grace, but I'm worthy of it, and you're worthy of it. Hakuna, stop whining. My dog is whining in the background. Yes, hello. Say hello, girl. I think she misses her dad. Anyway, so when all the world and all this chaos is telling you again who to be, and telling you how you should act, and what you should wear and what you shouldn't wear, and how you should or shouldn't show up, I would invite you to take a step back and ask yourself, how would you like to show up for the world? Who are you? What does it mean for you to show up the way that you would like to show up? What does that look like? And how much can you give yourself grace when you do it messy? When you show up and you fuck things up, and, things just don't turn out the way that you expect, or, like you are basically learning how to be fluid and learn how to, have grace for others as well as for yourself. What does that look like for you? Because it looks different for me, and there's a whole lot of hurting people out there. And so it's like, if you try to follow every single rule that everybody puts out there for you, whether it's religion or just people in the world these days, you're going to be miserable, because you cannot conform to all of those things. You simply cannot. There's too many. Do you ever watch Harry Potter? One of the last movies that they came out with, where that crazy wicked lady came into the school and like took over everything, and like every time something would piss her off, she'd put a rule on the wall. You remember that? My favorite part of that entire movie, that caused me so much relief because it was such an example of real life, is when that wall exploded and all of those rules came tumbling down. That part of that movie I will never forget, because in my mind at that time, I was looking at situations in my life where there were rules on rules on rules on rules on rules, and you just could not get it right. I could not get it right. And I didn't even want to anymore. And so what was transformational for me is to throw all of that off to the wayside and to really start to look at me. Who am I? Who do I want to be? What applies anymore? What doesn't apply? Because guess what? There's things that don't apply to you. There's things that don't apply to me, because there's so much about mindset that can change so many things. Mindset can change things like the way you age. They can change things like the way you work in relationships. It can change things, okay? Your mindset is everything. So how do you want to show up for the world? How do you want to show up for yourself? How do you want to be? Like, do you want that freedom? Do you want that ease, that flow, that peace? What's it going to take for you to get there? These are all questions that you can ask yourself, that you can journal it out. And that inner voice is going to help you. That inner voice is always going to guide you to whatever is best for you, and it might look like some pain. It might look like some chaos. I know that's where I am right now, and I don't like it, and I don't have to. But ultimately, it will lead you to things that will be, in the end, for your good, because that is how the universe works. Everything that is happening in your life, good, bad, or indifferent, is working to serve your highest good. And I know that's really hard for some really shitty situations, but I have worked in counseling with people who have been horribly abused, and inevitably, once they've gone through healing, they say that in the end, it helped them become a stronger, better person, better version of themselves. Now, that's not to say we invite that in. We don't, okay? But no matter what comes your way, no matter what stress, what situations, what shitty things, you can take each and every one and you can look at it and you can learn from it and you can become stronger and better for it, right? Because how much do you understand people who have been through the same things you have? How much compassion do you have when somebody has walked in your shoes, right? Or you've walked in their shoes? I have so much more compassion for people who have been through things like I have, because I understand. Even if it's on a smaller scale, I now understand why they might feel the way they do. I understand, and can have some grace for them in those situations, because I understand what they're going through. And even if I don't fully understand, because I don't, there's lots of things I don't understand, I can at least take a step back and have some grace, because I understand that everybody's going through things, right? So, lastly, again, I show up messy, okay? I don't do this life perfect by any means at all. I fuck things up. I say the wrong things. My mouth gets me in trouble. But you know what? That's what happens. Can you imagine if a toddler said the wrong thing and we came down on them, like sometimes we come down on ourselves or each other? They're learning they're learning to discover their voice. And a lot of us are learning to discover our voice because we were told to sit down and shut up all of our life, right? We were told that we need to listen to this person, that person, everyone but ourselves. So some of us are learning to use our voice. We're learning to, how do we do this? And it's going to be messy at first. And for me, that's where I'm at. It's messy and it's okay. It's really liberating, actually. Obviously it sucks when I get it wrong and I don't like it, but in the end, it is liberating. So that's what I have for you for today. I hope you follow that inner voice. I hope you find out who you are and what makes you tick and who you want to become. Have a fantastic rest of your day.